How did blimps not immediately get shot down in war when they are basically giant slow balloons? In WW1 for a while, Zeppelins could outperform planes and chill at altitudes where fighters couldn't get at them effectively. They also weren't just one big balloon. They were a bunch of gas chambers inside a frame, so they could survive a few punctures and had a crew that could patch leaks. Once planes got good enough to actually fight them effectively, though, that was the end of them. The first half of the war, they were shooting the blimps constantly with the airplanes, but the tiny holes the bullets made didn't do anything to such a big blimp. As the war went on, they started using incendiary bullets to bring them down. There's a great Nova episode on the WW1 Zeppelin attacks on London that explains this in depth. In short, blimps aren't balloons in the sense that the gas inside them is pressurized. A bullet that pierces the envelope passes through the Zeppelin, but since the pressure of the gas inside and the air outside are roughly equal, the lifting gas doesn't escape all that quickly. Yes, it was difficult for planes to reach the altitude Zeppelins operated at, over 7,000 feet, but it was nearly impossible for them to do anything about them even if they reached them. The invention of incendiary ammunition changed things somewhat and allowed aircraft attacking the Zeppelin to set the envelope alight and thus bring it down. Complicating factors were that most of the raids occurred at night, so actually locating the Zeppelins and intercepting them was quite difficult. Before radar was invented, https://n.m.wikipedia.org Wiki German bombing off Britain 19,141,918. Blimps were rarely used. Zeppelins were a thing for a while. Both were unlikely to be one large sack of gas, but instead were commonly cellular in nature, having several sections, sort of like an inflatable boat with 3 chambers. Bombardment balloons were a diff matter entirely. Those were literally just balloons. Also, bullet holes don't leak out the gas as quickly as you'd think. There was often sufficient time to do repairs or patches. Not a blimp or a Zeppelin, but there is a relevant scene in the young Indiana Jones Chronicles where young Indy has to climb around the outside of the balloon doing repairs. Interestingly, German Zeppelins had hatches and ports and lifelines on the upper deck allowing for repairs. In fact, the outer layers of the various war-era Zeppelins were notorious for rolling and needing to be sewn while underway. PBS Nova's Zeppelin terror attack was about how German warfare had the edge during WWI. Even though they floated with hydrogen gas, it was relatively difficult to ignite them. Brits developed special flame artillery to do so. Second advantage is they're quiet, hard to detect at night. Terrifying to have fire weapons fall on you all of a sudden. Brits eventually built acoustic concave detectors to hear them. For one thing, they were using Zeppelins, not blimps. They are not the same thing. A blimp is a single pressurized chamber. A Zeppelin is a rigid frame with multiple chambers. A blimp can be shot down with a single shot. Zeppelins are pretty resilient and can take multiple shots without going down. A few years ago, Canadian FA-18s tried to shoot down one of those famous Chinese spy balloons, but apparently the rounds passed right through it without causing much deflation. And those are 20 mm rounds. I would imagine a giant Zeppelin would be surprisingly difficult to shoot down. Blimps existed in the narrow period of time where air travel was possible, but so new that they hadn't decided ways to shoot down aircraft. Surface-to-air weapons didn't exist yet. As a result, a blimp could fly higher than anything could accurately be fired at it. They were just too high. But they were short-lived for a reason. Airplanes became popular, as did the weapons to shoot them down. Even filled with hydrogen like the German Zeppelin, it's not that easy to cause enough leakage to down them. Eventually, they basically invented incendiary rounds, and aircraft engines finally allowed them to reach the heights and speeds the Zeppelin operated at. Not to be that guy, but you actually mean Zeppelin and not blimp. The distinction between the two is a Zeppelin has a frame where the balloon is stretched around, while a blimp is inflatable and doesn't have a frame. You wouldn't call an 18-wheeler a car either, even though I guess the terminology for Zeppelins is a bit outdated. Blimps were mostly used in WWII by the US-UK navies for anti-submarine patrols or convoy protection, where endurance was more important than speed. They were generally never used in contested airspace. They were shot down, but at night when they crossed there were multiples and got risked in order to get a few over the line and drop their payload. However, searchlights to seek them were needed and good operators. Bullets generally don't reach that high. Just for the record, Zeppelin is used as a generic term for German WWI rigid airships. They also used Stielands airships, albeit in much smaller numbers, much less successfully. They flew too high. After planes and guns got upgraded, they were immediately shot down. Welcome to why we don't use them. Until the invention of the incendiary bullet, there wasn't really a good way to shoot down a Zeppelin. With a normal solid round, the bullet would usually enter the gas bag and pass out the other side without igniting the gas. A tiny bullet hole wouldn't cause a leak big enough to endanger the dirigible before it could get back over friendly territory, and the gas bags had internal dividers so a leak wouldn't empty the whole airship. After incendiary rounds were invented, fighter planes could reliably set Zeppelins on fire, and they became much less useful for battlefield support. A lot of the comments here aren't getting to the heart of the issue. It's not got much to do with the airplanes in the air or the guns in the ground, but in the ammunition used by both. A bullet hole is small, and the blimps were divided into sections. It'd still take hours for an appreciable amount of gas to leak out. A bullet passing straight through the blimp still leaves the crew alive, and a few hours of gas left to leak out. It wasn't until incendiary rounds were invented that we saw the fall of blimps and rigid airships. Once we could set fire to them with a single shot, it was game over. The thing with shooting a balloon is that the bullet just goes through and nothing happens at all. The leakage from tiny bullet holes is negligible. You can of course shoot at the crew, but the balloon is hundreds of meters in the air, so good luck hitting them. It's kind of similar to why drones are so effective in Ukraine. You can't shoot them down because you can waste a truckload of ammo, and you are still not going to hit it. Play Friends in High Places in Battlefield 1 captures the experience pretty well.